Hey everybody, Dave Whitmarsh for Best Practice in HR, doing the CEO interview with Sam Reeves from Compteam. Had a little chat before, and we're pretty much in polar opposites. He's right now spending some time down in Arizona, and I'm freezing up in Canada. Um, I think you'll like this. I think if you're interested in compensation and where it's going and the impact it's had in your organization, stick around. I think you'll find this entertaining. Welcome, Sam.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to be on your show there, David. This is great to be reaching out to the Great White North up there. And
Even though everything I do is in the U.S., I do reside here. Um, so allow people to put some of this conversation down the road in context. Give us a bit about what you do, where you came from, and what Comp Team does, so they can pull from that as the conversation progresses.
yeah, so I started my career over 25 years ago in talent management and compensation. I went to school in California. I was in uh, Saddleback. Well, I started off in Saddleback College and then went up to Sacramento State University. So I was out there, and I started working in a lot of financial firms and doing some looking at stock options and so forth, and then got hired on by a company to really look at their employee stock options, specifically around their executives. And so after diving into that, I discovered the world of compensation and then how much compensation can have an impact on companies and driving their success and then also shaping the lives of their employees. So I became fascinated by that. So started working for a lot of the Fortune 5, Barclays, BlackRock, McKesson, ADP, and really honing my skills through them for a number of years. But I wanted to really do my own thing. I wanted to really help those small to medium-sized companies grow and develop, uh, especially internationally, because I just love international compensation. And so I started my own company about 12 years ago, Compteam. So the focus was to really look at the technology sector, and the technology sector was important to me because there was they really cared about their people, really cared about finding the best people for their organization so that they could grow rapidly and expand. And in order to grow rapidly, those organizations need a solid infrastructure to build upon, something that is going to scale quickly. And so I know how to do that through my career and putting that structure in place and paying people in dynamic markets, being very close to the marketplace and skills and so forth, and keeping track of those. And so I loved that dynamic. And so that was the really the birth of Compteam, helping those companies grow internationally and in various markets.
Mhm. It's interesting because they're like compensation just in general is trickier than everybody thinks, right? But then you add international compensation and some of the policies and just the way that they go about doing things in different countries. That's a project that I'll be the first to admit I probably wouldn't want to take.
Well, for sure. I mean, there's in various countries there's different cultural aspects, regulation, and so forth. But when you boil it all down, compensation is there to meet our employees' basic needs. That they need to earn enough to where they can focus on doing their best work. And so the other elements that surround compensation become very interesting at that point. So what is the work-life balance that they have? Do they have adequate benefits and all those pieces? Do they have is the employee value proposition in a way where people can focus on doing their best work? And then we can take other elements of compensation, such as variable awards, stock plans, and or different types of long-term incentives, and craft them so that's going to drive behaviors that will achieve the mission of the organization and generally make the lives happier for all the employees that work there. So that is our main goal.
Yeah, interesting. And so do you building out these comp plans, do you dabble into like performance management, or where does what's the core of your firm, and what are you comfortable with on the outsides?
So the core of our firm is compensation in the job structure. So we go in there, we understand their compensation philosophy, their total rewards philosophy, and start with putting the foundation together of infrastructure that is going to enable them to grow and scope their organization. And so that starts with the job structure, doing effective job evaluation, and then
Hmm.
ensuring that jobs are paid to their compensation philosophy. And there's many to choose from. Too many to talk on this particular show here, but so that's the main element. And so once that piece is in place, we also are looking on the ancillary programs. So for instance, what's the skill level of their management? Do they have good communications? All these factors that are going to impact compensation programs. Now, we don't specialize in effective communication and all these different pieces. We have partners that we ask to come in and fix problems that exist if we see something that's wrong with the framework, wrong with their total rewards package. And so as they're fixing those ancillary problems that impact employee rewards, we can hone a solution that is going to drive success year after year for the organization.
Very cool. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Once you have that footplate or that template down, then employee counts up and down, then it's irrelevant, right?
Right.
Yeah. What I know I've talked to a couple comp folks of late, and they've had some interesting changes, over, I'll say over the last 4 or 5 years, just through legislation. A few states require you to post your salary ranges. There's also that just working at home now, right? So some people that were getting paid a premium to be in your major cities, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, are, have moved to Montana, Idaho and things like that to work from home. And so have you seen much of a shift or a change in any of those things that you've had companies wanting to work with you on addressing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, when we think about regulation in any part of the world, it's typically put there for a reason. So it's important to understand the backstory of why regulation was put in place to try to understand the culture and so forth. So here in the United States and Western countries like in Europe and so forth are interested in pay transparency for the reason of pay fairness to eliminate the wage gap between genders and so forth. And so that's the main drive. And it's been happening for years and years and years. And it's just getting more and more intense. So the important part for organizations in the United States and outside the United States, regardless of where you're located, it's important to understand that this is something that is becoming more and more prominent. And whether you have this regulation in your location or not, you need to think about adopting more transparent practices, more fair practices, because this is coming your way. And as we are hiring people from on a global basis and all across the United States, because we are more remote workplace, you're going to find or operate in or try to attract people from states or locations that demand pay transparency. So those employees are looking for that experience. When they're looking at jobs in their state, they may see those ranges posted, and then they look outside their state and they see some that are not, and that puts a question mark in their mind. And of course, when an employee is looking for the best place for them to do their work, they're more apt to select a business that is more transparent. They're thinking that it's more fair, and so that's what a lot of companies need to understand. Even if they're in an environment that doesn't demand them to post wages ranges on their job postings, they're going to be impacted because of this. Just the cultural norms in the United States are changing.
Hmm. Good point. And what other shifts or things are sort of being brought to your attention?
Well, so the pay fairness and especially, you know, is heating up outside the United States. I mean, with even more stricter regulation in Europe that is on the rise here in the next few years. And so that's one thing that companies should be thinking about and preparing for, how to find job evaluation methodologies that are going to stand up to the regulatory stresses. So in the United States, we're familiar with what's called job classification methodology of job evaluation. In Europe, that is not known to be good enough for the regulation. There's coming to a more of a we're returning to more data-driven job evaluation techniques to ensure that we can really compare jobs that are like for like. And so in the 50 years ago, I mean, that was the Hay came out with the point factor method. And there's been companies such as Radar and so forth that are outside the United States that have been honing that methodology to drive more data-driven methodologies for job evaluation. So I do think that that is one element that is going to change. Now, if we're just look at here in the United States and thinking in the near future in 2025, and we have a new president that's coming on board, and a president that is voiced, tariffs and so forth on some of our the supply chain that we've been relying on in the past. And frankly, regardless of the presidency, it may not be a good idea to rely on that supply chain in the future, because the world demographics have been changing, and we're seeing that there's simply not enough people in some of our legacy supply chain to deliver the output that was necessary. So in the United States, we expect there to be a lot more nearshoring. And nearshoring means that we're going to be hiring people. There's going to be a greater demand to hire people that are either more local or are part of our trade partners that are near the United States, such as Canada and in Mexico. So that's going to increase wage pressures likely in the next few years. There's going to be upward pressure on our wages. Now, here in the United States, we still are dealing with demographic changes as well, such as we have a lot of our baby boomers that are retiring and that have retired, and there's less knowledgeable talent that to hire in specific skill sets. That's going to cause an increase in wages as well. The other piece that is a concerning factor is we've have a lot of immigrants in the United States now that from past practices. And so what is going to happen to all those people? Are we going to integrate them into the workforce, or are they going to be, it's going to be difficult for them to work? Are they going to be sent home? We don't know exactly how that's going to unfold. And so that could, if they become part of the workforce, that can help alleviate some of those wage pressures.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not part of the workforce, that can increase some of those wage pressures. So we're really going to have to see how 2025 lays out in the first few months of the year to understand the full compensation impacts. But it's going to be an exciting year for sure.
Yeah, yeah. There'll be a few people that will be on speed dial for a lot of CEOs or high level folks in organizations, right? Just asking for clarity depending on how everything comes down. Right, like even if I happen to work for a U.S. company, right, it would be questionable right now whether or not I would be subject to a tariff.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
so Yeah, interesting. Um, and so when you work with companies, I know you said small to mid-size, but what does that usually mean from an employee size?
So a lot of the, I mean, first of all, we've helped companies that are as small as 25 and as large as, tens of thousands. So, but there's always that ideal client size that we like to work with, and that's usually anywhere from that 200 to 2,000. That's where we really like to work with those size companies because that's where they're really starting to ramp up and into that growth stage, and that's where we see a lot of our solutions come into play in helping with that growth. Now, as companies that are larger, the larger they get, a little bit more of the bureaucracy, and it's harder to change the direction for a couple more years. And so those jobs, those types of projects are more expensive and take a longer time. So we like to see those quick results and that impact, and that's usually with those smaller to mid-sized companies that are more agile.
When you are talking about the international companies, like that just isn't something that happens easy, right? That's a process, change, validation on your suppliers to make sure that they can do whatever's needed in each country that they may have employees in. So definitely a longer issued action plan there.
For sure. But it's important. One of the things with working with international, or if you're thinking about a company that is trying to open up an international site or in a country, it's definitely important to ensure that you have uh, people on the ground that understand what is going on in that area. And so that's part of our strategy is that we coordinate and network with professionals all over the world that are experts in each area. So, for instance, I'm currently I'm going to be starting a new project in Slovenia this year, and they have operations in Slovenia and Europe and different parts of Europe and so forth. And so through my network and my colleagues in Europe, we've developed a strong web of consultants that can help in any country. And so I think that's one thing for professionals that are listening in out there. I mean, there's it's probably more important than ever to ensure that we are well connected as a community of professionals across the world to understand the different pressures and to really get that firsthand experience. And so, any young professional out there, I would recommend them to get out there and network as much as they can, talk to people as much as they can, because everybody has something to offer and expertise to provide.
Yeah, that's so true. It's amazing. My wife says that all the time. If you meet a person and you don't know something, if they haven't taught you something, you haven't asked the right questions,
That's right. That's right. That's very
right?
wise.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And then so really I see what you're doing as definitely helping like with processes, right? Do you have technology or do you work within companies' existing tech? Like, if in some cases, like, give me an idea what an engagement may look like.
So of course, the important part, if a company has existing technology that's in place, we like to leverage that as much as possible, because that if you start switching out systems, or there's change management, there's costs involved and so forth, and in training. And so the important thing is to really look at the infrastructure of what an organization has and leverage it as much as you can, to find the strengths and weaknesses of what their current systems are. And so we spend our first few months of the engagement by doing a deep dive in a discovery phase to evaluate those systems. So if we do find gaps, then we're going to put it on a roadmap that may last for a couple of years to put things in and with responsible change management that ensures that we can move the needle year after year. So that's one thing. And the next is that we have people that are experts in technology. So Howard Niswitz on my team is an expert in compensation, technology, and HR systems, and he knows what works well together and so forth, and has reviewed systems over many years. And so if we have then the important thing is that we don't just have one system that we are going to recommend. We want to make sure that when we have a client that has a gap that needs to be filled, we will provide them with a number of systems for them to select from, and we'll make our recommendations, and they'll choose the best fit for them.
Yeah, and if they have 2,000 employees and Workday's been implemented, you can probably preach all you want, but you better figure out how to make it work in Workday.
Right. And especially, if you have a capable system like that, I mean, there's definitely things that can be done. And so it's just understanding what works and what doesn't, and then making responsible changes and recommendations down the road for sure. Now, there has been many systems that I've been working with over the number of years, and I know that your firm, FutureSolve, is an expert in artificial intelligence, and you consult people on our clients on that. And I've had the opportunity to work with several software providers in compensation, helping them evolve their software practices using artificial intelligence, and it's been a real fun ride for the past few years. And so there's a couple of new solutions that are that are out there that can help our clients a lot, and we're bringing those online now.
Yeah, yeah. So I will tell you, Sam, that yeah. So FutureSolve was a very small contract I had that I worked to help them for 10 hours a month. And
Oh yeah.
I think they branded me as their director or something of marketing. So it was about, I don't know, maybe 10 months that I helped them out. So it was very short-lived, a short-lived engagement. So that has helped them with a few of the partners and affiliates. But so I don't want people thinking I'm an expert as far as what they have going on, but certainly happy to answer any questions about them and point you in the right direction. So, yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's good stuff. Is there anything else that you'd like to sort of talk about before we wrap up? And I also, everybody that's listened to a number of my podcasts, they've heard this 1,000 times. Sam is going to give me a bio and ways to connect with his company, his preferred method. So if you're listening to this, look below. And if you want to get in touch with Sam, he'll provide me the best way to do that.
Well, I got to say, it's just, David, we've been talking about 2025 and things, and I'm really excited about getting into this new year and seeing what happens there. I think that one thing with the HR overall and compensation, when I started out in comp, um, many years ago, I mean, there was not a whole lot of advancements that were going on at that time. And over the past 10 years, we've just seen a ton of change. And as companies have been forced to flex, become more agile and resilient to these market shocks. And so it's a great time to be in our field in HR overall. And so I'm just glad to meet people like you, David, that I can talk to and kind of explore the future.
Yeah, keep up the good work, Sam. I really believe that comp is a hidden gem within most companies' HR departments that truly can deliver good data points, statistical validation, metrics, whatever you want to call it, that can show positive trends and positive rewards for positive actions. Um, and there's not a lot of other HR departments that can do that as effectively as comp can.
Yes, I agree. Well, it's been good talking with you, David. I really appreciated the conversation.